So in the last lesson, we touched on the missionary activities in Matebeleland, and we discovered some of the problems that they faced because Lobengula and Zilikazi did not want their religion to be diluted or their culture to be diluted, because Christianity was coming in with some values which were against their religion. So let us look at the missionary activities in Mashonaland. And I also mentioned one thing: when the missionaries were frustrated by the lack of progress of evangelism, that's when they now engaged in politics. Initially, their target was social, but later on they discovered that they are failing to make meaningful converts. That's why they engaged in what? In politics. So as for the Shona, missionaries also found it difficult to reach them. Because Lobengula also claimed that he controlled all of Mashonaland. Lobengula or the Ndebele claimed that Mashonaland was under the Ndebele. Hence, all missionaries wanted to work there to pass via Lobengula's court to get a clearance. And Lobengula refused permission for mission stations to be set up in Mashonaland. Like there was this explorer, they call him Francis Coilard. Is it Coilard, if I'm not mistaken? That was in the year 1887. Like he had exercised influence over Lewanika, tried to set up a mission station in Western Mashonaland at the crow of Chief Marshal Mombe. He was, however, removed by a force of Ndebele Amabuto and taken before Lobengula, who warned him not to repeat the attempt. Right. An Anglican priest again from South Africa called Greenstock in 1876 tried to convert the Shona people without getting approval from Lobengula, which I think that when it was all about religion, I think Lobengula was being right, because the Shona and the Ndebele were fine with their with their ancestral spirits. Iwo yao ndoya ngwachita iwo yakanaka, religion yedu yakanaka, yenye mwe chinayo varungu vantoita chivanhu chavo chavanoita. Ndakaona mavideo paiva Queen Elizabeth. Kune zvimwe zviri weird zvinenge zvichingoitwa ipapa, but isusu tikaitawo zvedu zvinenge zvichinzi mweyetsvina. So in 1888, another Anglican, George Bishop Knight Bruce, tried to convert the Shona people in northern Mashonaland. Knight Bruce anga mboshandira kuSouth Africa kunonzi kuBloemfontein, and he obtained a clearance from Lobengula. His aim was to continue the work that another Anglican priest, Greenstock, had started. On arrival in Mashonaland, he visited many Shona chiefs. I think India akavhura mamwe missions mazhinji kuMashonaland. If I'm not mistaken, even yekupena longa kwedu nekunana Bernard Mzeki and stuff, you know. So the missionaries, due to their failure, were therefore praying for change that would create a great opportunity for Christianity. That's why they ended up engaging into politics. So conquest of the Ndebele was now considered as a prerequisite for missionary work. A clear example of this change of attitude was seen in the activities of David Carnegie, J.S. Moffat, and C. Helm, who were now involved in politics. Like during the signing of treaties, which led to the occupation of Zimbabwe, we had J.S. Moffat initially. Then J.S. Moffat set up the foundation for the decisive Rat concession of October 1808. And during the proceedings of the signing of the Rat concession, Reverend Charles Helm was also available. You know, so what were the reasons for the failure of missionary activities in Ndebele state? Number one, the Ndebele were unwilling to accept Christianity because the Ndebele society was self-sufficient, and the Ndebele had a strong religion and a centralized political system. The suspicion that the Ndebele had about intentions of foreigners, especially whites, and the cultural arrogance of the Ndebele. Like they felt like their culture is valid, and that's a good point. Like to feel important about your culture. I don't see any problem with that. So the reason why they had a clash with both the Shona and the Ndebele simply because Christianity looked down upon, or it despised, their customs, their beliefs and practices such as polygamy, raiding, infanticide, and the caste system. You know, so Mashona neMandebele izongotaiwa mungashoori zvinhu zvatinenge tichiita. So hamusi kupinda munomu. And some missionaries were inexperienced and were tactless in dealing with the Ndebele. They did not know the structure of the Ndebele society. It was so strong. And you can also talk of the Ndebele militarism leading to the failure of the missionaries, and that it was conservative. Right, so what were the problems experienced by the missionaries in Zimbabwe? Number one, many missionaries died of diseases, especially malaria and yellow fever, and it was not easy for the sick to access medicine or to develop immunity. This attack by diseases dealt a serious blow to the progress of missionary work, and mission stations were established in places where transport was difficult to access. Yes, some of the roads were impassable, so missionaries had to travel long distances, usually on foot, and risked such hazards as attacks from wild animals and from local people. And it was not easy to make converts because communication was also difficult. That's why they had to employ some African evangelists, but it was also not an easy thing. Yes, it was not also an easy thing. So there was also the problem of poor communication with the mother country. There was also literacy problem because these people were educated and they were trying to tell so that then becomes a problem. And the opposition traditional leaders were so rigid. Because the African traditional leaders, they felt like Christianity undermined their authority. So that's why Lobengula ordered these people to leave Christian teachings alone. There is evidence that after 20 years of preaching in Inyati, only one convert was made, a leper who later died. It must be noted that Roman Catholic made less resistance because it tended to accept some cultural practices and included the need that day-to-day worship, and you can see it in the Roman Catholic Church. Ukatasa Roman Catholic Church ine kama kachiwanuka ina. Zvatinoita zvekuti kana munhu afa toti musvitsiro kuna nyingi kuna vanozviita futi. Kuti mutisvitsiro kuna wangerengere wedu, mutisvitsiro kuna Peter nokupfungaidza zvinhu zvatinongoita. Pane masimilarities ariko chivanhu chedu handinoziva chinobvumidzwa madoro nekuita sei kuRoma zvinobvumidzwa futi. So ukatarisa even neconcept yekuti kune hosho nengoma dzinoridzwa muchechi zvatinoita kuna Methodist nekuna Anglican, that's not originally from them, because hosho nengoma, these are African instruments. So imwe trick yangu wakushandisa ndeyekuti vanga wakuanalyze how we practice our religion, then wotry kuzviita smuggle ini muchechi kuti tikaona ngoma irimo muchechi toenda kuchechi teti kuti vari kuacceptawo zvatiri kuita. Ndosaka uchinoti pamamission ese the Roman Catholic was leading, because yakatombosiya Roman chaicho vatanga kuadopta chimwe chivanhu kuti vanhu vadini vajoine. Ndosaka uchinoti ukatoisa masimilarities eRoman Catholic woisa chivanhu unotomboona mamwe masimilarities ariko, because they were trying to convert the Africans, you know. So the Africans had their own religion which they were not able to easily give up, you know. So the missionaries had a problem of manpower shortage, and again later on their association with the colonizers created problems. And they had a problem of lack of supplies of European goods, food, medicines, tools, and clothes. Often they depended on explorers and other white fortune seekers who passed by to get medicine and other goods. So as for food, it were the local people who mostly came to their rescue. The local people could supply them with maize meal, vegetable and milk, and the lack of supply was due to the fact that their stations cut them off the outside world. Like my mission stations are wide, so like they couldn't get any help. Zvangofana kuti wakaimba yako paprazi pakati panonetsa kuti ubatsirwe. Vanhu varungu vaizviita vaya vainga vaine masupplies izvozvo zvesimba ende vaibva vafonera kana doctor kuti warapiwe pamba kana, you know. So there was the problem, because iwo kana wafunga kugara kure nevanhu unofanira kuva uri self-sufficient. Handiri kubata mezazvo. Make sure kuti sauti unayo, upfu unayo. So pamwe pacho unogona kusara usina upfu hwekukodza sadza. Tinozviita kuno kugeto. Unenge wakumbira next door. Iwo the moment yekuti uri kugara kwako wega pakati pezisango, you must have everything you need. Yes. Because ukaperewa nesauti pakati pesango unokumbira. Yes. So missionaries manje ndo imwe blanda yavaiita, vainogara kwavo vega vasina zvimwe zvinhu. So there was the problem of killing and converts. The killing of converts or exiling them. For instance, Mangeba was killed by Mzilikazi, and warfare and raiding created fear among the missionaries. So they feared for their lives as they had lacked security. And there was also the problem of lack of roads. They faced the problem of delays in the granting of permission to operate, and they were chased away. But sometimes, with what people younger frustration tactic, with what people footing for cooperate, zaitora time. We're going to go funeral. So they faced the problems of pressure from political leaders to be involved in colonialism, and some missionaries were killed by local people. For example, Bernard Mzeki was killed. So which solutions did they come with? Methods used by missionaries to solve these problems. The language, they used sign language and interpreters from South Africa. They built clinics for curing tropical diseases. They set up mission stations to educate Africans. They taught native children to read and write, learning native languages, aided communication. They also assisted in colonialism so that their work to spread Christianity was made easy. Colonizer. And they grew their own crops. They also used catechists and evangelists among Africans, especially Panya translator. So let us look at the impact of missionary activities in Zimbabwe. Teta kubata kuti ndezvipi zvakanaka zvavakaita ndizvo ndezvipiwo zvakashata zvavakaita. So the benefits, let us look at the positive benefits. Number one, the treatment of the sick people caused happiness to the local people, and most missionaries had medical know-how because they had to survive in an environment that was disease prone. So vamwe to animal medical kits. We have heard about JS Mofatanu Zakatopo Trita Lobengula. They also inoculated cattle because there was once a cattle disease around 1860, and how they helped save many Ndebele cattle which could have died. And the missionaries promoted trade in Matebeleland by either bringing the goods for trade themselves or bringing traders, and however, not many of them did so. So archaeologists dug out foreign goods like beads, clothes, and so on, obtained through trade with ivory. Examples of traders brought by Robert Moffat in 1854 included S. Edwards and a hunter called John Vlogion. So they also improved agriculture in Zimbabwe because they came up with new farming methods. They came up with new farming equipment, since they were also able to produce their own food. So the farming equipment include the plows, the cultivators, and the cycles. They even imported from South Africa. Later on, they introduced the planter. They came up with new crops like the vegetables and some exotic foreign fruits. This improved the diet of the local people. There was also the improvement in infrastructure, because these mission stations, so there was, through the building of schools, mission stations, churches, hospitals, and clinics. So they also reduced social ills, like infanticide, even killing of twins, because the panel was although tikada kuanalyze zvinhu zvazvaizotaura zvazviri zvekunyepawo because vaida kujustify colonization. Kune macultures anoti matwins aiurayiwa but handingaoni reason ingati vanhu vangaura zvimwe zvacho vaingospice off kuti vaone justification. So they introduced various trades and skills in Zimbabwe. They included building, carpentry, and needlework. This helped in creating employment and made rural economies viable and self-sustaining. So people therefore started self-help projects. So there were non-benefits. There were also non-benefits. Number one, the missionaries' activities led to divisions among the local people, because these people were united by the African traditional religion. So vamwe vavo pavari kuzoti like sort of kufurirwa, it means part to create by division. Vanaonya munhu havachaonani because of religion. So when they converted some people, right, they subsequently led to division. This subsequently led to what? To divisions. So missionaries attacked African customs. So it was very normal for all missionaries to attack African customs, and they even labeled them as backward, archaic, and barbaric. This was expressed in many different ways. For example, any convert was to take a European name. Waiti ukabva kuchivanhu kwako waibva wabhabhatidzwa upiwa rimwe zita rechirungu, wakutonzi Peter, wakutonzi Paul, wakutonzi chii. And ukada kutarisa vanhu vakararama kudhara kuma-1950s 1940s, vazhinji vacho vaipiwa zita nemamissionaries. I'm sure baba wangu mudhara wangu wainzi Peter, baba wangu wainzi Maxwell Blessing Peter. So the name Peter vainzi vakapiwa here nemamissionaries. Tete wangu ndo vanonyatsoziva the history, but ukada kutarisa mazita avo futi ari religious. I have an aunt vanonzi Eve, like maitopiwa mazita sort of kuchechi or something like that. So the missionaries left missionary work to be employed by concession companies. This was the case with the London Missionary Societies, where members were in the payroll of the British South African Company. So missionaries thus became accomplices who assisted in the subjugation of the Africans. They worked against the local people as interpreters and witnesses, and misinformed African rulers about the realities of colonization. That's why Reverend Yom Namufat, they were involved in colonization, because the colonization process was signing of treaties. Iwo vaivamo masigning of treaties, which means vakatobvisa bachelor of fundis vakutotanga kuita zvinhu zvepolitics. So they wrote negative reports about Zimbabwe. Zvanabotaura zviya zvekuti even nyaya dzematwins dziya handifungi kuti nyaya dzechokwadi. Handina hangu 100% evidence, but ndichingoanalyze nekuongorora vanhu vaida kuita yatinoti propaganda and smear campaign so that they can find reasons to colonize. Hanzi kana bere rakuda kudya naro rinotanga kuvablame kuti muri kunhuhwirira kunga mbudzi. Fana imi muri kunhuhwirira kunga mbudzi. Rikuedza kutaura kuti mutori mbudzi da kutokudyai. Rinofanira kuwana reason kuti wai wakazodya vano, but ini munotiziva kuti vana vainhuhwirira kunga mbudzi, ndakatofunga kuti mbudzi bva ndadya. So mamissionaries anga asingaoparati ega futi takanangana necolonization. Vaibatana nemahunters nematraders nemaconcession seekers, because timu remahunters nematraders ndo vamwe vanhu vakatombotanga kuuya before mamissionaries. Vamwe vacho futi vakauya muperiod yemamissionaries futi. So vaiita kubatsirana, and the reason why tiri kuvaisa some same sentence is simply because vai spread the same gospels rekumarketa Zimbabwe, so kuti macolonizers auya atori nyika upon. Like tikabata Robert Moffat, he paved way for the colonization of Zimbabwe when he negotiated with the Mzilikas and they opened a mission station at Inyati in 1859. Mwana wake ndiye akazoumba futi imwe station muna 1870, and Charles Yeom was in charge of the new station at Hope Fountain. These mission stations accommodated those whites who came into the interior. Ma white side au colonizer vanga wakutogara ma mission stations. Because in ndikakupa example yatinoti St. Andrew's Mission iri kwedu kwaMutare uku ndiye Roman Catholic Church. Panenge paine church poita chipatara chitori nemochari nemanesi anenge achitogara around the area, potoita chigayo chechechi, panotosvika magetsi, poita dzimba dzematicha, poita chikoro. So it's sort of katorika world kekutoti vanhu vanotogara rapona. So vanhu vaya vaida kutora nyika vakatotanga kutogara mamission stations imomo. So the missionaries sent reports to Europeans in Europe and South Africa about the riches in Zimbabwe. They published economic prospects. Muno mune game, muno mune minerals, mune chi, and that's why they later on engaged in what? In politics. Because the roads, you understand, Lobengula ngasina tobodusa in that position. Because I told you about ida utengesa nyika. But papa ni missionaries vanamufatina na CDO. Vanhu vekuti varungu vaikolonize vasati vauya vakatongotanga kuva neushamwari naLobengula. So Lobengula aivatrasta vanhu ivavo. Remember, kunyange zvazvo angasingabvumidze kuti vaconverte vanhu stereki. Ndambotaura kuti mamissionaries akatomborapa Lobengula aine gout. Mamissionaries futi ndo vairepair pfuti dzake nechii zvese, you know. So that's where the justification of the statement, the flag followed the Bible, comes through. The flag followed the Bible. It means to what extent did the missionaries contribute to the colonization of Zimbabwe? ndezvipi zvavakaita ndizvo. So the missionaries also published pagan practices by Africans which needed the attention of European governments. Missionaries invited their government to destroy the Ndebele state after failing to get consent, and the missionaries invited their government to end what? To end slavery. So all this justifies the phrase, the flag followed the what? The cross. Right. So European hunters and explorers kune kunotonzi kuselu ndizvo. It's before Chekutu, after Norton. Vari kona Fridley Selu inzvimbo dzavakatodiscover idzo dziya dzainzi dzine gold nemagame mune mazebra nechi varungu ndozvavanoda kuona. So a number of European hunters came to Zimbabwe. They hunted game, especially elephants for ivory. These hunters included vanonzi Martinus Squads, vana Henry Hartley, vana John Lee, Jan Hugh John, Piet Jacobs, Frederick Courtney Selu. They were mainly interested in ivory, a commodity that was in high demand in Europe. Hunters such as Selu came into the area to hunt as far as Mount Darwin. They spied on the territory and sent back reports on how wild game was abundant in the Ndebele and Shona areas. Panama traders, George West Beach, right? He was interested in gold. Also journeyed into the interior as far as Lewanika's territory north of the Zambezi River. There are some traders too, Sam Edwards, Joseph Macab, George Phillips Cowmatch, who was also a geologist. So these traders spread rumors about the abundance of gold and ivory in the area. So this also stimulated the interest of people like Cecil John Rhodes in the Ndebele and Shona territories. So at the end of the day, tikabatanidza information yese yaipublishwa ichimaketa Zimbabwe yema-missionaries, hunters and traders and concession seekers, ndo yakazopirwa kunana Rhodes vakabva vatai varege colonize nyika iyi. So it should be noted that the missionaries, the traders, hunters, travelers, as well as concession seekers who popularized the interior. Without them, Zimbabwe could have been hardly known. Most of these social misfits at home, and that is why most of their accounts were not fully authentic. So that's it for this topic. The next lesson, which we are starting on Monday, is the colonization of Zimbabwe by the British from 1890.